The soft music of the banquet hall still drifted through the air. The scent of expensive imported lilies lingered beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers worth tens of thousands of dollars. Every inch of the grand ballroom screamed luxury and perfection. Then everything froze. A horrifying silence swallowed the room of 200 guests. Every head slowly turned toward the decorative planter in the corner of the hall. My wife Catherine was lying on the floor. The elegant champagne-colored dress she had spent months choosing was now smeared with thick black mud. The hem was torn apart. Blood trickled down from her scraped knees. Her face had gone pale from shock and humiliation. She was not crying out loud. The shame was too overwhelming for tears. Standing beside her with folded arms was Madison, my new daughter-in-law. A smug little smile curled across her lips. Her expensive high heels stood inches away from the muddy mess. Her pure white wedding gown remained spotless. The contrast was cruel, deliberate. She looked down at Catherine with absolute contempt. But the thing that truly shattered my heart was not Madison's cruelty. It was my son's reaction. Trevor walked over. He did not kneel to help the woman who carried him for 9 months and sacrificed her entire life for him. Instead, he wrapped an arm around Madison's waist. He leaned close and whispered something into her ear. Then the two of them laughed. Their quiet laughter echoed through the silent ballroom like knives scraping against glass. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a drink, grab some snacks, sit back, and remember this. The people in these stories always had the chance to do the right thing. They simply chose not to. Make sure to subscribe and comment the name of the city you are watching from so I can see just how far this story has reached. I stood 5 steps away from them. My entire body trembled with a rage I had never felt before. I stared at the wedding ring on my son's hand. Then I looked at the mud covering my wife. That contrast felt like a slap across my face as a husband and as a father. I had spent my entire life earning millions of dollars to give my family the best possible life. But today my own money had funded a wedding where my wife was treated like worthless trash. The character of the two people standing there disgusted me more than words could describe. I took a slow, deep breath. The cold calmness returned. I slowly pulled my phone from the inside pocket of my suit jacket and called my private attorney. He answered after the second ring. I looked directly into my son's eyes and spoke into the phone. Cancel everything. This wedding is over. Then, I slipped the phone back into my pocket. There would be no mercy anymore. Did a man who shoved his own mother into the mud deserve even a single dollar from my fortune? I ended the call. The world around me seemed to lose all sound. Everything stood still. I could hear nothing except the suffocating rhythm of my own heartbeat pounding inside my chest. The disappointment crushing me felt heavier than a mountain. That was Trevor, my son, the boy I had raised for 26 years, the child I taught to bend down and help a woman when she falls. And now he was bending down only to whisper into the ear of the woman who had just shoved his mother into the mud. I stared at him. Trevor still had one arm wrapped around Madison's waist. In his other hand was a glass of expensive champagne. His face showed no shame. To him, his mother's fall was nothing more than an awkward little accident. His weakness had reached its final stage. He was afraid of Madison, afraid of ruining the perfect atmosphere of his wedding day. So he chose betrayal instead. He chose to stand beside cruelty just to earn a smile from his new bride. My wife slowly looked up at our son. There was no anger in her eyes, only unbearable pain. It was the look of a mother realizing that the child she loved more than life itself had just driven a knife straight through her dignity. She gave the faintest shake of her head. The first tear rolled down her cheek, mixing with the black mud staining her face. She tried to stand on her own, but her legs trembled too violently to hold her up. Whispers began spreading across the ballroom. Quiet murmurs buzzed through the crowd like a swarm of insects. The luxury of the 5-star venue suddenly felt suffocating and fake. At the center of the stage stood the massive 7-tier wedding cake. It no longer looked beautiful. It looked like a monument to meaningless vanity. Madison lifted her chin slightly and adjusted her veil. Not a trace of guilt crossed her face. As the bride, she believed she had the right to rule over everyone today. She believed I would stay silent to protect the family's image. She was wrong. I walked toward my wife. Every step felt heavy but certain. I did not look at Trevor. I did not even glance at Madison. From this moment on, they were strangers to me. I lowered myself onto one knee in the dirt. I did not care that the mud stained my expensive dress pants. Gently, I lifted Catherine's trembling arm and helped her back to her feet with all the care and respect a husband should give his wife. Only then did Trevor finally take a step forward. For the first time, confusion flickered across his face. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something to ease the tension. He still believed this was just a small misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with a few empty words. I shut him down with a single icy stare. If a man cannot protect his own mother, does he deserve to inherit the fortune she sacrificed her youth to help build? Then I turned and walked straight toward the center stage, where the microphone waited beneath the lights. An earthquake was about to explode in the middle of that wedding. I stepped onto the stage. The sharp sound of my leather shoes striking the wooden floor echoed through the ballroom. The massive hall suddenly fell silent. 200 guests turned their full attention toward me. I pulled the microphone from its stand. A piercing screech burst from the speakers before cutting out completely. Then came silence again, heavy, suffocating, the kind of silence people make when they know an explosion is coming. I stood tall beneath the stage lights, shining against my tailored suit. But my mind was focused on only one person, my wife. She was still standing near the corner of the room, quietly wiping mud from her trembling hands with a handkerchief. I turned toward Trevor and Madison. Madison's face had started to change color. She finally realized my calmness was not surrender. It was preparation. Preparation for punishment. Trevor, meanwhile, had instinctively moved behind his wife like a frightened child. He knew exactly what kind of man his father was. I raised the microphone. When I spoke, my voice carried through the ballroom with terrifying clarity. Calm, cold, sharp enough to cut through steel. I apologize for interrupting everyone's celebration tonight, but I believe a marriage built on humiliation and cruelty does not deserve anyone's blessing. I paused for one long second. My wife and I are leaving now. I will not stand beside evil. Not today. Not ever. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Gasps spread across the crowd. Chairs scraped violently against the marble floor. Madison's parents jumped to their feet from the head table and started toward the stage. One look from me stopped them cold. I would not allow anyone to interrupt me. Then I released the microphone. It crashed onto the wooden stage with a deafening bang that echoed across the entire hall. I stepped down from the stage and walked directly toward Catherine. I took her freezing hand into mine. Then I pulled the silk handkerchief from my suit pocket and gently wiped the remaining mud from her skin. I wrapped my arm around her shaking shoulders. Do not be afraid. I am here. Then I led her toward the grand entrance. We walked between rows of silent guests. Not one person dared step forward. Not one person dared speak. Behind us, Trevor suddenly ran after us. Dad, wait. You cannot do this. This is my wedding day. His panicked voice echoed behind me. I never turned around. I shoved open the massive oak double doors of the ballroom. My chest rose and fell beneath the weight of the decision I had just made. Together, Catherine and I stepped out into the freezing night air. The lavish $100,000 wedding behind us already looked like a ruined battlefield left behind in the dark. But Trevor and Madison had no idea yet. We were not driving home. The car tore through the darkness. Streetlights flashed across the windows, casting broken streaks of light over Catherine's face. She still had not spoken a single word. Her thin hands remained tightly clasped together in her lap. I drove with one hand while holding hers with the other. A bitter ache swelled inside my chest. What happened tonight was not some sudden outburst. It was the final explosion, after 18 months of silent suffering. 18 months. That was how long Madison had been part of our lives as Trevor's fiancée. And for 18 long months, Catherine had endured one calculated humiliation after another from the woman who was about to become her daughter-in-law. I remembered the very first family dinner. Catherine had spent hours in the kitchen preparing her traditional beef stew to welcome Madison into the family. But the moment the dish was placed on the table, Madison pushed the plate away in disgust. Too much cholesterol, too cheap. That was what she said. Catherine only forced a weak smile to keep the peace. She swallowed the humiliation for the sake of our son's happiness. But Madison's behavior only became worse. At every family gathering, large or small, she found new ways to isolate Catherine. She deliberately seated her at hidden tables far from the center of the room. The reason was painfully obvious. She did not want Catherine appearing in the glamorous photos she posted online. To Madison, my simple and kind-hearted wife was an embarrassment, a stain on the upper-class image she was desperately trying to build. The thousands of dollars she constantly asked me for designer dresses and luxury shopping stood in disgusting contrast to the way she treated the woman who gave birth to her future husband. Then tonight I finally learned the full truth behind the incident before the push. Before the reception started, Catherine had accidentally brushed against Madison's gown in the dressing room and left a small stain near the hem. Madison exploded. She called my wife a low-class countrywoman who ruined everything she touched. In front of all the bridesmaids, she planted her hands on her hips and demanded an apology immediately. Catherine was too stunned by the disrespect to respond, and when she quietly refused to bow her head, Madison never forgot it. She waited until the ballroom was full, waited until every guest was watching. Then she shoved my wife into the mud like it was some twisted public execution. Madison believed she was the predator. She believed my wife was weak prey. What she forgot was this: she had stepped into my forest. I pressed harder on the gas pedal. A few minutes later, the car pulled to a stop in front of a towering office building in the center of the city. It was late into the night, yet the lights inside my law firm's office were still glowing. Madison believed she had only ruined a wedding dress tonight. What she did not know was that the next 3 phone calls I was about to make would destroy the entire luxury life she had only just begun to touch. I led Catherine into the private lounge inside my law office. I poured her a cup of warm tea and gently placed it into her trembling hands. "Get some rest, sweetheart. I will handle everything." Then I stepped into the office next door. The dim desk lamp cast a cold glow across my face. The entire room felt wrapped in steel and silence. It was time to use my most powerful weapon: financial warfare. I lowered myself into the leather chair and glanced at my watch. It was already late into the night, but time no longer mattered to me. I opened my contacts list. 3 phone calls. That was all it would take to completely collapse the world Trevor and Madison had built while laughing at my wife in the mud. If you were in my position, what would you do if someone humiliated your wife like that? Comment number 1 if you would keep supporting the person who shoved her. Comment number 2 if there is no forgiveness and you would cut them off completely. As for me, I chose to be the husband my wife deserved. I made the first call. The person on the other end was the luxury real estate agent handling Trevor and Madison's penthouse purchase. My $60,000 deposit for their new home was sitting in escrow. Cancel the transaction immediately. Transfer every dollar back into my account. The agent sounded confused, but I gave him no chance to ask questions. I hung up, then I made the second call. This one went to the luxury event and travel company. Not long ago I had happily signed the checks to help give them the perfect life. Not anymore. Cancel the $42,000 sponsorship package. The imported flowers. The celebrity photographers. The upgraded honeymoon package in Italy. All of it. No flowers. No glamorous photos. And absolutely no Italy. Then came the third call. My bank director answered immediately. Freeze Trevor's supplemental credit card effective now. Just like that, more than $200,000 in financial support vanished within 10 minutes. Their luxury lifestyle evaporated into the dead silence after each disconnected call. I slowly placed the phone back onto my desk. Not a single ounce of hesitation touched my heart. Madison wanted to play queen with my money while humiliating my wife. Pathetic. That night, the 2 of them were probably still drowning in champagne and celebrating what they believed was their victory. They still thought they were royalty standing above everyone else. But by morning, reality would come knocking at their door. What I did not expect was how quickly the punishment would arrive. Just before dawn, my phone suddenly exploded with violent ringing. Trevor. His name flashed across the screen over and over again, alongside frantic banking alerts flooding his phone. The true thunderstorm of that terrifying Monday morning had begun. The phone rang violently. Its shrill sound shattered the silence of Monday morning. The clock had just struck 7. I glanced at the screen. Trevor. His name flashed over and over again. I did not answer immediately. Instead, I calmly took another sip of bitter coffee and let the phone ring through a third round before finally pressing accept. Trevor's voice exploded through the speaker. It was trembling, panicked, barely holding together. "Dad, please tell me there has been some huge misunderstanding. The real estate agency just called and said you withdrew the penthouse deposit." The hotel says my credit card has been frozen too. Madison is losing her mind right now. Please, Dad, just turn the card back on. I leaned back slowly in my leather chair. My voice remained completely calm. There is no misunderstanding. I canceled everything myself. Trevor froze for a second before stumbling over his words. Why would you do this? It was just a small accident. Madison was overwhelmed from wedding stress and lost control for 1 second. Mom is not even seriously hurt. Why would you destroy my future over something so small? The weakness in his voice turned my blood cold. I tightened my grip around the coffee cup. When I answered, my tone was still calm, but beneath it sat pure steel. An accident. I may not understand modern technology, but I am not blind. I saw her shove your mother, and more importantly, I saw you laugh. You stood there watching your own mother lying in the mud while whispering jokes into your wife's ear. Silence. Complete silence. In the background, I could hear Madison screaming hysterically inside the hotel suite. Glass shattered somewhere behind him. Something heavy slammed against the wall. Trevor spoke again, desperate now. I was not laughing at Mom. I was just trying to calm Madison down. Dad, please, you have to help us. The landlord said if we do not replace the deposit today, we are getting kicked out. I slowly stood up and walked toward the office window overlooking the busy streets below. Yesterday they had looked like royalty. Today they sounded like beggars. I gave him one final sentence before ending the call. Tell your wife to pay the rent with her tears. My money will never support ungrateful people. Then I disconnected. I temporarily blocked Trevor's number. Deep down, I already knew this would not end quietly. Madison's pride would never allow her to accept humiliation without striking back. But what Madison could never imagine was this. Just as she prepared to make her next move against me, a third force had already entered the game behind the scenes, and it was leading her straight into a trap with no escape. After I blocked Trevor's number, their panic quickly transformed into rage. My phone finally fell silent, but Catherine's phone began vibrating non-stop beside her. Message after message flooded in from Madison. I picked up my wife's phone and read them myself. Not a single message contained genuine remorse. Every word was shameless blame directed at the victim. Madison claimed she never meant to hurt anyone. She insisted Catherine simply lost her balance and fell on her own. One message actually read, "Are you really going to ruin your son's future over something this small?" I let out a cold laugh. Shoving a woman approaching 60 years old into a pit of mud in front of 200 guests was now considered something small. When none of the messages received a reply, Madison completely lost control. She used another number to call me directly. The second I answered, her shrill screaming exploded through the speaker. "You do not have the right to do this to us. The wedding already happened. I am Trevor's legal wife now. We are family. You owe us that apartment and the money. That is my right." I listened quietly while she screamed like a spoiled child having a tantrum. The fake elegance she displayed yesterday had completely disappeared. When she finally stopped shouting, I answered with icy calmness. "You were never family to me. To me, you are nothing more than a rude stranger with no class." Then I hung up. Only moments later, Paul called. Madison's father, a man who worshipped status, money, and appearances more than morality itself. He spoke to me in the same arrogant tone he always used. "Raymond, this is just young people making mistakes. My daughter has a bit of a temper, that is all. You are blowing this out of proportion and embarrassing both families in front of friends and relatives. People will laugh at all of us." I tightened my grip around the phone. Then I cut straight through his excuses. "Paul, if you taught your daughter how to shove people into the mud, then perhaps you should also teach her how to crawl back out of financial ruin by herself. My family does not accept daughters-in-law who humiliate their own mother-in-law. Goodbye." I ended the call and blocked both him and his wife immediately. Their shamelessness had finally reached the limit of my patience. They believed family pressure and public appearances could force me into submission. They were wrong, because the real punishment waiting for Madison was not the money I had taken away. It was something far worse. The very weapon she loved most in the world. Social media. Somewhere online, a 15-second video had just been uploaded, and at that very moment it was beginning to destroy Madison's reputation in a way that could never be repaired. The very weapon Madison used to flaunt her glamorous lifestyle had now turned against her. One of Trevor's cousins had recorded the entire wedding disaster, and somehow they had captured the perfect angle. The video clearly showed Madison smirking before shoving Catherine straight into the mud. It also captured Trevor's disgusting little laugh as his mother lay on the ground. The clip was uploaded to TikTok with the hashtag #EvilBride. The power of social media was terrifying. By the next morning, the video had already passed 400,000 views. Every hour, the numbers climbed higher. Thousands of furious comments flooded the internet. Online users dug through social media accounts and quickly uncovered Madison's identity. Humiliation crashed down onto the newly married couple like a tidal wave. Friends unfollowed her overnight. Luxury party invitations disappeared instantly. Even the fashion company where Madison worked announced her suspension because of the ethical scandal surrounding the viral video. The internet had tied her to the public whipping post. But reality punished them even harder. Without my $60,000 deposit, the real estate agency immediately canceled the penthouse agreement. Trevor and Madison were ordered to vacate the property at once, so it could be given to another client. On that freezing Monday afternoon, the two arrogant newlyweds were forced to pack their own suitcases by hand. The luxury vanished overnight. Tow trucks arrived and repossessed the expensive car after the credit cards stopped working. And suddenly, they had nowhere left to go. Even Paul, despite his pride and wealth, refused to financially support his daughter. His company was already facing backlash from the scandal, and he feared further damage to his reputation. So Madison had no choice. She dragged her suitcases back to her parents' old house and moved into the cramped, messy bedroom she had not slept in since her teenage years. The woman who once acted like royalty now cried through cheap family dinners beneath a leaking ceiling fan. No more romantic nights at five-star restaurants. Only endless arguments about who would pay the electric bill. I sat quietly in my study reading the damage reports my lawyers continued sending me. And deep inside I felt something close to satisfaction. Justice had finally arrived. People who humiliate others with arrogance and money should one day experience what it feels like to lose everything themselves. And the moment the money disappeared, the cracks in their so-called perfect love story finally began to show. Madison started blaming Trevor for being weak and incompetent. Trevor, meanwhile, sank deeper into desperation with every passing day. Then one stormy night, drowning in anger and humiliation, my son made a reckless decision that would change everything once again. Less than a year after that disastrous wedding, their marriage collapsed completely. The ending was inevitable. A relationship built on greed and selfishness could never survive once the money disappeared. The moment the luxury vanished, their so-called love vanished with it. One violent, stormy night, frantic knocking suddenly echoed through my house. I opened the front door. A soaked figure stood trembling beneath the porch light. It was Trevor. For a moment I almost did not recognize my own son. The polished, confident groom from that wedding day was gone. Standing before me now was a broken man. His beard was overgrown. His clothes were wrinkled and drenched with rainwater. Deep, dark circles hollowed out his eyes, and bloodshot veins stretched across them from sleepless nights and emotional collapse. Madison had officially filed for divorce. She had found someone better. A newly rich businessman willing to buy her designer bags and fund her luxury lifestyle. The second, Trevor, stopped being useful. She abandoned him without hesitation. Trevor dropped to his knees in front of me and Catherine. He broke down completely. His tears mixed with rainwater as they streamed down his face. Mom, Dad, I am sorry. I am truly sorry. At the wedding, I froze because I was a coward. I was terrified. Madison would make a scene and destroy the image of the party. I was selfish. I betrayed Mom because I was weak. Catherine could not bear seeing her son in that condition. She immediately burst into tears and stepped forward, ready to embrace him. But I raised my hand and stopped her. My heart ached deeply, but the experience of a father forced me to stay clear-minded. I could not allow sympathy to destroy the lesson Trevor desperately needed to learn. I stared directly into my son's eyes. The cold steel calmness returned once again. Do you understand where you truly failed? You failed because you valued your mother's dignity less than the pride of a cruel woman. Trevor lowered his head in shame. In the end, I allowed him to come home, but I did not give him a single dollar in cash. I refused to finance weakness and dependency. The next morning, I returned to my attorney's office once again. I ordered a complete revision of my will and estate protections. This time I established an extremely strict legal trust. Trevor would only inherit through tightly controlled protections, completely shielded from any future wife he might marry. Before receiving anything from me, he would first need to learn how to build a life with his own two hands. And surprisingly, Trevor accepted every condition without complaint. He moved back into his old bedroom and took a hard labor job to start rebuilding his life from nothing. For a little while, the storm finally seemed over. Peace slowly returned to our family. But just as we began believing life had settled down again, everything changed the very next morning. An anonymous letter appeared at our front door, and inside that envelope waited a horrifying secret about Madison that none of us had ever imagined. That anonymous letter turned out to contain audit evidence from Madison's former company. She was not just cruel. She had also been involved in embezzling company funds before she was fired. Her endless greed finally dragged her straight into the legal system. The suspended 2-year sentence became the perfect ending for a woman who once believed manipulation and arrogance could place her above everyone else. The truth came out, and every debt from the past was finally paid in full. Time moved on. Warm sunlight once again filled our home. The living room no longer carried the artificial scent of imported lilies. Instead, the house smelled of Catherine's fresh-baked pastries drifting from the kitchen. My oldest daughter, Jennifer, was expecting her first child. For the first time in a long while, our family felt truly peaceful again. Catherine often sat beside the window with a gentle smile on her face, quietly knitting a small blanket for our future grandchild. The mud and humiliation from that wedding night had finally been washed away by something far more powerful: real happiness. Meanwhile, Trevor worked quietly at a small office across town. He rode a motorcycle to work every day and earned only a modest salary. He paid for every meal himself. There were no more unlimited credit cards from his father. But something inside him had changed. The weakness was gone from his face. For the first time in years, he was learning the true meaning of self-respect. Sometimes allowing your children to fall into the mud of reality is the only way they learn how to stand back up with dignity. From a distance, I watched my family rebuild itself, piece by piece. And after everything we endured, I finally understood something important. The true value of a man is not measured by how much money he earns. It is measured by what he is willing to use that money to protect. The generosity of a husband and father is never the problem. The real danger begins when we use our wealth to support cruelty, arrogance, and ingratitude. Protecting the dignity of the people you love must always come first, no matter the cost. Because the moment you tolerate evil just to protect appearances, that evil will eventually consume your entire family. Always be the strongest and most unshakable protector for the person who stood beside you through life's hardest years. If this story about dignity, justice, and family touched your heart, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next powerful lesson. And do not look away from the video appearing on your screen right now. There are many more unforgettable stories waiting for you. Click it, and I will tell you another one.